Today's episode is sponsored by Studio Bank, co-founded by Belmont alum Harry Allen. With decades of banking experience, Studio Bank combines the best of both worlds, the sophistication of a larger institution with the unparalleled client service of a great local bank. To learn more about how they support Nashville's creators, visit studiobank.com.
Welcome to the What If podcast. We're sharing an ever-growing collection of stories from the Belmont entrepreneur community to inspire you to start and keep going. I'm your host, Elizabeth Gortmaker. Here we go. Well, welcome back to the What If podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We have a real treat for you all today. Belmont's president, Greg Jones, is joining us. We'll be talking through Belmont's new strategic vision and specifically our mission of data-informed social innovation and creativity so regions can thrive. And if that sounded like a mouthful, don't worry. We're going to unpack all of that during this conversation. But first, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today on the What If podcast.
Glad to be here.
Before we talk about all things entrepreneurship and innovation at Belmont, let's talk a little bit about your journey here. Can you tell us about your background and what led you to Belmont?
Sure. I spent most of the last quarter century at Duke University as Dean of the Divinity School. I oversaw the global strategy and programs for the university. I developed the Innovation and Entrepreneurship undergraduate certificate at Duke and was still at Duke and thought that's where I'd probably end up my career until I got a call from Belmont asking if I'd be interested in being considered for the presidency here. And I asked, what are you looking for? And they said, someone who's Christ-centered, entrepreneurial, and likes to build things. And I thought, that sounds interesting. So my wife and I began to discern a sense of calling to be a part of this wonderful community.
Was that, okay, so that was just a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
We kind of joke on campus that you hit the ground running before you even walked in the door. It's been a whirlwind of a year in all the best ways. But I'm curious a little bit more about that decision for you and Susan. You know, what was it that really attracted you to Belmont? Did it align with your individual purpose and mission? And was that an easy decision, you know, later in your career? Or what was that time like when you guys were deciding this is a big choice to pick up and move and what this could look like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I had pretty well decided I was done with higher education administration about 5 years ago, and then was asked to go back to serve as Dean of the Divinity School at Duke to address some issues that had emerged there. And so I realized that while I can do turnarounds and understand the significance of that work, I really like to build things. And so I was really more oriented toward working with foundations and doing more entrepreneurial things for the rest of my vocation. And then the Belmont opportunity seemed like a great combination where it was university leadership in a very entrepreneurially minded institution. The momentum that Belmont had in the previous 25 or 30 years was really remarkable. I actually knew of Belmont literally since I was born because my parents had an apartment across the street from Belmont back around the time I was born. And so I'd known of Belmont, but I didn't see all the tremendous growth that had happened. And the more I learned, the more I saw this real sense of momentum and that sense of the possibilities of the future. Began to feel like it was an institution and a platform where Susan's and my gifts could really fit well. And the opportunity to be in Nashville, which is a growing dynamic city, was also just a tremendous opportunity. The more I learned about the kind of reputation that the College of Business had as a place that, the first undergraduate major in social entrepreneurship and the Cone Center for Entrepreneurship, and then all the music and entertainment work, as well as healthcare, and the opportunity to launch a new medical school. It was a place that had a lot of creative energy, and that was really exciting to me.
Yeah. Didn't you have a distant relative who also had attended Belmont?
Yeah, although I didn't learn that until after I accepted the invitation to come. And then my uncle told me, your grandmother, his mother, was a student at Ward Belmont literally 100 years ago.
Wow.
1922 to 23, she was a student here. I now have her transcript hanging in my office. It turns out she wasn't as good a student as she made herself out to be later in life. I think she was more interested in my grandfather than she was in her studies 100 years ago. But it now feels like there were just all these incredible ties, and it was really meant to be that I'd end up here.
What a cool story. I love that. Well, you've set a very ambitious strategic path for Belmont. Tell us a little bit about how this strategic trajectory came together, and really what it means for Belmont to be the leading Christ-centered university in the world.
Yeah, I jokingly say that was really a stupid thing to say. I said it one day at a provost retreat, and it was because I was talking to the deans, and we were talking about what we might aspire to, and it was not very interesting. And it was like moving up in the rankings on this or that and improving SAT scores and those sorts of things. And I said, what if we just stopped thinking about those sorts of metrics and said, like we aim to be the leading Christ-centered university in the world by 2030. Somebody wrote that down, and that became the context of conversation. I jokingly said, a new president ought to have said, I want to be the best university east of Vanderbilt and west of Tennessee Tech, because, that's more likely to be achievable. But I do believe seriously that leadership involves setting God-sized dreams and then executing on those dreams. And if you're not developing God-sized dreams, then you're probably not aiming high enough. It means you lead by nausea, because it means your dream is always going to exceed your grasp. And yet that's where really transformational opportunities happen. And so as we began to develop those that aspirational aim, then it was, well, what would it take to get there? And we began to articulate, things we'd want to be known for: forming diverse leaders of character, helping people find creative solutions to complex problems through teaching, research, and service, and being radical champions for the flourishing of all people. And then we began to say, well, what would be the pathways that would enable us to get there? And that's when we began to articulate 5 pathways that have that kind of significance. And, one of them, as you mentioned in the intro, focused around data-informed social innovation and creativity so regions can thrive. It's a mouthful, but it's really trying to say, how do you get to that transformational level, that entrepreneurial mindset? It's linked to whole person formation, an integrated vision of health and well-being, hope and inclusive excellence to help regions thrive, and storytelling that amplifies truth, beauty, and goodness. So that those 5 pathways, they're not separate paths. They're intersecting pathways to help us achieve that aspirational aim. And it's really a way of saying we're going to stay in beta mode and keep iterating and learning and growing. And that's where the transformation really happens. And that's been really exciting, was to see the various dimensions of campus, faculty, staff, students, alumni, trustees coming together and saying, well, yeah, what if we did that? And now having catalysts for those pathways to say, let's work together and dream and execute on those dreams.
Yeah, it truly is bringing all of campus together, and it's really enriching the student experience. The university is not just 4 years of learning how to pass a test, but what that 4 years means for a young adult who's developing and figuring out who they're going to be in the world around them. And then also for Belmont, we've said this, that we really see ourselves as a very resource-heavy institution, whether it's the passion or the skills or the intellect and the people that are here. How can we then take those resources and serve the world around us? And I think this new strategic trajectory and the language around it just really pulls all that together for the entire Belmont ecosystem, and brings us together in a really inspirational way. So I just love the language that you've put around this and how you've already gone about explaining this, and then, where we're headed moving forward. It's really new on campus, and it's very refreshing. There's a phrase you just mentioned a few minutes ago, the entrepreneurial mindset, and you frequently speak about the importance of an entrepreneurial mindset. Can we explore that a little bit more? How do you define that? And how would you explain its importance within the context of a university education?
Sure. Well, I think obviously entrepreneurship and innovation is really important, and that's a key element of it. But often we think that it's only about starting new enterprises or starting new businesses in that sense. An entrepreneurial mindset is really a future-focused mindset that says, what if and how can we can if kinds of themes, and really orients you in whatever vocation you're going into, whether it's nursing or ministry or teaching or business or music, that you would have that kind of future focused and see where are things headed. On campus now, I've told this, used the line so often that it's become something that people mock. Wayne Gretzky's comment about that when he was asked what made him a great hockey player, he said, most people skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going next. Mm-hmm. And, in higher education, too often we're skating to where the puck once was or where we wish it might be. It's hard enough to even get to where the puck is. An entrepreneurial mindset's always looking to the future, to the various conditions and saying, what if, we can if, here are the conditions, here's where we think the world is moving. And if you have that entrepreneurial mindset, you're going to be anticipating new opportunities as well as challenges. And then you can see tremendous possibilities. Because, the truth of the matter is most of our current undergraduates will, at some point in their careers, be working in roles that don't currently exist. And so it's focused on that future orientation. That may lead to starting a new business as an entrepreneur. It may be what sometimes is called an intrapreneur, doing innovative things within an existing organization. But it's always focused on the possibilities and the what if directions that we might go. And I think that kind of mindset is necessary no matter what role you have, so that you're always anticipating the future, not just kind of nostalgically wishing the past might return.
Exactly. We've been really excited in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation department. One of the first things that kind of seemed to happen after you came to campus is a lot of these barriers started to fall down. Traditionally, it's really easy for a university campus to become siloed, where you're in the sciences or you're in the business school or you're in the music school. And it can be tricky to work all across campus. Even though we've been doing that for years, there's still some barriers there. But one of the first things that we saw really start to happen about a year ago when you were here is that some of those barriers started to fall down. For example, we have an entrepreneurial mindset course now that any student on campus can take. We're opening it up campus wide. Whereas in the past, maybe you had to have certain prerequisites or you had to be in the business school to really get into some of these entrepreneurial courses. But we see that in our department, in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation department, with the Cone Center for Entrepreneurship. Everything I do is for all students on campus. And there's really two main tracks. There's that traditional entrepreneur, and Belmont has a lot of them, of students that have an idea, they're launching a venture, they're going to be so successful and do amazing things in the world. But the vast majority need to be equipped with that entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe they start a business, maybe they don't, exactly like you were saying. But we can teach them, we can hone those skills, we can get their brain thinking in that mindset for every Belmont student, which will equip them to go be leaders around the world. So we just love some of those cross-campus collaborations and some of those things that are naturally starting to form. Speaking of, here's something cool that's happening this week. Let's talk about the Hope Summit. It's kicking off today, October 24th. Tell us a bit about what's going on across Belmont's campus this week with regards to the Hope Summit.
Well, we're really excited about this Hope Summit. The idea is to capture the energy of the campus and our partnerships and relationships to really work on different pathways. Each year we'll have a Hope Summit. This year, the focus is on Pathway 2, unleashing creativity and innovation to help regions thrive is our focus. It's that data-informed social innovation, we really want to highlight the way in which when you bring data together with the possibilities for transformation and the kind of work that you've been doing at the Cone Center, to really highlight the stories and the transformation that can occur. Kim Tan, a colleague who's based outside of London, as a social impact investor, and he has amazing stories of how, rooted in his faith, he's done investments that is in education, in game parks in South Africa, in prison reform in Singapore, helping women get out of sex trafficking in the Philippines. Extraordinary programs, and that entrepreneurial mindset just infuses who he is. And he's interested in partnering with Belmont, and he's going to be with us during these 3 days. And just the inspiration that he brings is so exciting, and bringing conversations. We want to build a Nashville ecosystem that's even stronger than the ones that you all and colleagues have already been developing. We want to have that be part of Tennessee Thrives, an initiative to really help cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset across Tennessee to help both urban and rural areas thrive. And then we want to have it expand across the country and indeed around the world. You know, one of the most inspiring times for me last year was the night we gathered in the Fisher Center for the 100 entrepreneurs. And the stories, the videos that were shown that night that you had developed about the range of Belmont graduates doing really creative work in both commercial and social entrepreneurship, that often blurs together the business model. Seeing the transformation that's happening, the jobs that are being created, the impact in communities near and far, it was really inspiring. And we want to have this Hope Summit create that same kind of inspiration to shine lights on things our alumni are doing, our partners are doing, that can help stir an imagination. You know, we're living in a time when I think in our country and in our world, we're suffering from what I've been calling an imagination deficit disorder. We just are having a hard time imagining a bright future. And when you hear these stories, when you see these possibilities, and you then begin to say, oh, it can be different, it can be better, then amazing things become possible. And so that's what we're hoping to shine a light on. Kim Tan will be with us. We'll have some people from Nashville and elsewhere. We've got some amazing storytellers in Alice Ree and Rick Reckadal. We hope it'll be a time where our students, our faculty, our staff, people in Nashville, and visitors coming from all over the country will be inspired to see what kind of possibilities can happen through an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I know it's really going to enrich our students, and it's just going to be a wonderful week. Let's talk a bit more about data-informed social innovation and creativity so regions can thrive. My new colleague, Josh Yates, who you brought from Duke, he explains it as a calling for everyone, a craft everyone can learn, and a career for many. And really, that innovation and creativity, seeking human flourishing, it's rooted in the calling to love your neighbor. And the calling, the craft, and the career, it's how do we train? How do we educate? How do we do this in practice and not just in theory? So I would just love any more of your thoughts about that, and specifically about Josh and the Transformational Innovation Hub, and talk to us a little bit about where Belmont is going and some of the new leaders that you've brought on to lead the charge with this mission. Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about Josh in a moment. Let me begin with the data informed, because that's something we've been developing over the last year with the Data Collaborative, the Belmont Data Collaborative that was launched about a year ago in August of 2021. Charlie Apigian joined us from MTSU nearby in Murfreesboro, and he has just brought incredible dynamism and vitality and developed the Tennessee Data Warehouse, the largest collection of publicly accessible data to enable us to go down into neighborhoods and zip codes. And he and Josh Yates worked together in developing that technology. And it's an incredible resource because, you know, once you have data that can actually look at what's going on in a neighborhood or in a community, then you know what kinds of opportunities there are, what kinds of challenges and what kinds of barriers. And so the work that Charlie and his team have been doing in partnership with others throughout the Metro Nashville and Tennessee regions has just become a treasure trove. And so that data informed enables us then to know how to bring partners into the work. so that you can begin to say, oh, we need government to be involved here. We need business to be involved here. We need philanthropy or churches or NGOs to be involved. And there becomes tremendous opportunity. The aim isn't just to provide Band-Aids on a situation where the underlying conditions remain the same. We're really aiming to transform the equilibrium. And so what Josh is bringing is a series of ways of thinking and engagement to really focus attention on those transformational opportunities and possibilities. And the work that he'll be doing in collaboration with you and the Cone Center and with Charlie, especially once we get the top 2 floors opened up for the new Massey Center, co-working space, because, there's a lot of talent among young people. And if they get the opportunity not to operate in a silo or in a discipline, to cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset, to actually work on real world problems with partners from business or from the NGO world or from foundations and say, here are the opportunities that we could really solve some of these challenges. Take, for example, the work that we've done with Nashville Health to identify hypertension. It turns out that the places in Nashville, there's a big problem with hypertension in Nashville. Turns out the neighborhoods where hypertension is most serious are food deserts and places without sidewalks. So if your doctor says you have hypertension, you need to eat healthier and you need to walk more, and you live in that neighborhood, it's going to be challenging. And so then you can actually work with philanthropy or business or government or churches and say, hey, we need to develop sidewalks. We need to tend to the food desert issue. You can find constructive solutions. Sometimes there'll be business opportunities. Other times there'll be a new coalition of people that come together to work on it. And all of a sudden, sustainable businesses can emerge. This is where Kim Tan's work and partnership with us is so amazing, because sometimes he just comes up with an idea and I think, how'd you figure that out? One of my favorites is he gets women out of sex trafficking in the Philippines, trains them in digital photo editing for American real estate companies. So the women get out of a horrifying situation. They connect to families. They get training in a job skill. It solves a business problem for American real estate companies. It wins on so many different fronts. And by the way, it's actually making money so that it's a sustainable business over the long term.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's another initiative that was launched about a year ago, the Belmont Accelerator for Social Innovation Collaboration. We call it BASIC on campus. But there's a lot that we're doing on campus now to seek to help tackle some of these complex problems in Nashville neighborhoods. Talk a little bit about the opportunity you see, and you've already done this talking about Josh's work and the Data Collaborative, but I know you've said you see Belmont as a beacon of hope within our local community. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what that means to be a beacon of hope?
Well, the basic was the idea was we need to get people collaborating on campus and with community partners to work on these issues. There is no major social issue that exists in our society that sits within a single discipline or a single college. And so we needed to foster that kind of collaboration. And so we focused on children 0 to 8 and their families. And it turns out that we actually had faculty and staff already partnering with community neighbors in across the street from us in Edge Hill and in Antioch, that we could seed some ventures to explore how that can happen. And you see, once you focus on a positive hope that children 0 to 8 and their families could get started well, because the data is really clear that what happens for children 0 to 5 is so important for their long-term futures. And so we wanted to collaborate in that sense. And that's that hopeful future. Now, there are lots of issues and barriers and challenges that have to be addressed in order to nurture that sense of hope. Hope isn't optimism, because optimism is just rooted in I think I can. Hope is much more transformational in the long term, and it's rooted less in who we are than in who God is. And we want to be a beacon of hope that's always looking to the future and saying, we can if. And we're going to collaborate, and we're going to do it in an open-handed, open-source way, because what we really are aiming is flourishing. And well, I've just been so heartened by the basic initiatives and seeing faculty and staff and students and our community partners going above and beyond and imagining a brighter future for everyone. And that's that notion that I mentioned earlier in our aspirational aim, to be radical champions for everybody's flourishing. And, in many ways, we're wanting to shine a light on great work that's already being done. One of our alumni, Tommy Rhodes, has Barefoot Republic, this really neat summer camp that brings people from different ethnic backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds in a camp during the summer and cultivates unlikely friendships. And the growth of that project, Barefoot Republic, just shining a light on the amazing work he's doing is so heartening. And it's that kind of thing that we want to keep cultivating, shining a light on where it already exists, and hopefully creating a multiplier effect where a lot more of that kind of transformation happens.
Today's episode is sponsored by Studio Bank, co-founded by Belmont alum Harry Allen. Studio Bank is passionate about what its members create, and their team is here to support you through the process. Studio provides capital and services to build businesses. It offers mortgage and home loan options, whether you're a first-time home buyer or purchasing your fifth home. The bank works with artists to reach their audiences, helps nonprofits transform communities. And often, the most important work Studio Bank does is simply empowering individuals to pursue their dreams. Studio Bank is here because what you create matters. Visit studiobank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1761767.
So it's obvious you have a lot of grand ideas. You are an amazing leader and pushing us all across campus in so many positive, really amazing ways. We also didn't talk about yet, but you've written several books and you've done so many different things throughout your career. I want to ask a little bit of a personal question, because one thing I've noticed is that very highly successful people, athletes or entrepreneurs or visionaries, they typically have some type of practice of creativity and rest. We're walking through this in our Business Accelerator course that I teach to support more of the personal growth of the entrepreneurs who are taking that class with me. And we do this by actively seeking quiet in various ways daily and weekly, because having a practice of this typically leads to some of those groundbreaking ideas and the ability to work highly effectively and at a different level, So I'm curious to hear about how you structure your time. You're also an incredibly busy person. So I'm just curious, do you have a practice of periods of rest in order to allow that creativity to flourish in your own life? Or how do you kind of balance the stressors of a highly crazy work environment, but also being able to have the space so that you can think differently and really think outside the box? Does that make any sense?
It does. And rest isn't probably the right term for me. I'm not very good at that, but I do try to create green spaces and in my calendar that are time to let my mind wander and to reflect. So I'd say there are two key practices. The green spaces is actually a more recent development. I'll tell you where that came from. The first, though, is that the greatest source of creativity comes from interacting with diverse people and ideas. And I do that in a couple of different ways. One is easily part of my work as president is gathering people from different backgrounds together, whether that's out in the city or on campus. And so bringing people together who have expertise that I don't have. Once I got over the anxiety of the fact that I would not be the smartest person in most rooms I walked into, which, is sometimes challenging because you wonder, I don't bring any expertise into this meeting. Am I going to be exposed as an imposter? Mm-hmm. And once I realized that, that was going to be most meetings, so I better get over it. I go to a meeting and the pharmacy school, they know all sorts of things about pharmacy and about the world of diseases and treatments and pharmaceuticals. And I was just kind of like, if I have to bring expertise, I'm hopeless. So then I just assumed the posture of a learner. And so a lot of that I can do as president as part of the crazy busy schedule. And it's really what's energizing is the interacting with such diverse people and engaging lots of different ideas. I also do it in reading, whether that's online or books. I genuinely try on a regular basis to be reading 2 or 3 different books that are so unlike each other that there's a kind of collision of frameworks and ideas. And then I just mull those over. What I realized, though, was your second point about rest, or what I call green spaces, is I need unstructured time where I just let some of that stuff, whether it's a conversation I had with a really interesting person over breakfast, or it's an idea I read in a book on an airplane flight, to really allow that to marinate. And what I found was that I wasn't creating enough green space in my schedule. And I learned this really from the now retired chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Marty Dempsey, who's a friend. And when he was still chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he said that he blocked out several hours every week as green space for what he called his personal campaign of learning. And it was designed to make sure that he had enough space to reflect. And he told me that he did that even when he was having to testify before Congress about whether the U.S. should invade Syria. You know, I thought my life could be busy. Well, I think that's at a whole different level. And yet he said he always protected time for that green space. Yeah. And I realized that I wasn't very good at that. And, you know, so now Susan will sometimes say to me when I let my schedule get a little out of control and I'm just too busy relentlessly, she says, you know, I complain about how busy I am. She'll say, oh, and is your work more important than General Dempsey's was? Oops, you know. And so
she's a good wife.
I've had to be much more intentional in setting aside time for that green space, because that's where the creativity really distills. And I begin to say, oh, maybe we need to restructure things in this way, or we need to think this through, and learning how to pace that time. That's when the creative breakthroughs really happen. You know, when there's a window where I read something and it sparks something, and then it marinates, and then eventually I'll think, this is where we need to try this or something and pivot in a new direction. Yeah.
And it's really hard in today's world when we're so busy, and it's so easy to just stay busy because there's ample opportunity everywhere you look, you know? Yes. And I find for the younger generation, for our students, it's so hard to not be on the screen all the time, you know, to never just wait in line somewhere, but we're looking at our phones. And so we're really practicing 1 hour a day, no screens. You know, wow. And maybe 1 day a week, no screens. And this is what I do. And I'm challenging them. And so far they love it. And they're saying this is so refreshing. But to try to practice creating more than you're consuming in a world where we can just consume all day long, you know, whether it's the TikTok and all of that. But to be an entrepreneur and to be a leader and to do things differently, you have to have that space and that quiet time to reflect and to journal and to be in nature, where you're reminded that you are small when you're out in nature. And if we're just working like we typically do, we can tend to feel like we're larger than we are, you know. But
well, I think that's absolutely right. And creating that time, I live out near Radnor Lake State Park, and walking that path is so renewing. It also gets exercise, which I need, but there's something about just kind of looking and being distracted by seeing an animal and realizing the beauty of creation and that nature. I went on a walk with my daughter when she was visiting, and we were just kind of walking and talking, and it was in the midst of just kind of random conversation that all of a sudden a breakthrough came, and I got back to the house. And I immediately sat down and just wrote feverishly for about 25 minutes. And it was a creative breakthrough that I'd been stuck on. And it happened just by walking out in the state park. And all of a sudden, boom, you know, there it came.
It's awesome. I love that. Well, you mentioned books a little bit earlier. Do you have any particular books or authors that have made a significant impact on your career?
Oh, boy. Lots. It depends kind of on the subject. I've been drawn for a long time to the work of Roger Martin, who was former dean of the business school at the University of Toronto. He was the one who really taught me what he now calls opposable thinking or integrative thinking, that looks for creative solutions when it seems like you're stuck in an either or kind of dilemma. And that was really important for me in thinking through leadership generally. So Roger's somebody I've learned a lot from over the years. I'd also mention the book, A Beautiful Constraint, which was just gave me some really great frameworks and phrases. You know, I said that when we think of constraints, we usually think in terms of being a victim or a neutralizer. You develop workarounds for the constraint. And then they talk about transformational approaches and the we can if kind of approach. And that was really, really crucial for me. And that we can if is related to kind of the improvisational yes and. And so, you know, those books have been really important. More recently, a book that I've really been thinking a lot about, Safi Bakal's book, Loon Shots. He takes the idea of a moonshot, which is, you know, a God-sized dream, and then says, what if you're dealing with something, though, where it's not just a moonshot where people would say, oh, that's a great idea, but it won't work, which is a moonshot. It's a loon shot when he says, when people don't even think it's a great idea. They say it won't work and you're crazy. And you think about it, though, that's what Walt Disney did, you know, almost 100 years ago, was he had a loon shot idea of animation becoming the movies. And then you see Fantasia and Snow White, and all of a sudden, now what we take for granted at the time, or DARPA in World War II, the Defense Research Agency, which eventually becomes the incubator of the internet. What Safi writes about in Loon Shots was, during World War II, if it hadn't been for the protection of FDR, it would have gotten shut down because they thought it was a lot of people thought it was a bad use of resources. So now when I think back about that kind of entrepreneurial mindset and that aspirational aim for Belmont, it sometimes to some people might seem like a loon shot. And how do you make sure that you're making progress on it, that you're protecting it, that you're developing it and holding things together in tension? And so that's been a really important recent book. The most recent book I've read, which I'm still mulling and marinating with, is a book called Change. And it's actually challenging the assumption of talking about things going viral. He says, you know, it's fine to talk about something going viral if it's just a simple contagion. But if you're actually wanting to change people's behavior and their attitudes, then it's a complex contagion, and it doesn't function like a virus. So you need a much more complex set of strategies. It's less like a firework where you're just kind of spreading something and more like a fishing net. And so thinking about how that works within an organization and other ways, those sorts of things begin to just kind of marinate, and the images start to play in my mind. And I keep going back to books like that.
Yeah, man. And it's so true. There's so many things we take for granted today that when it was being developed or invented, they were crazy. You know, they were not seen as normal in their society. And now it's, you know, so many different things that are just a part of our everyday lives.
Including Belmont. I mean, think about 1890, two women from Philadelphia saying, hey, let's start a college. You know, I mean, that would not have been just taken for granted as an obvious thing. And yet now look at Belmont University, and we owe our very being to two women who probably were seen as crazy at the time.
And they did not take the easy route.
By no means.
Nope, but they believed in what they were doing, you know? So really that kind of ties into my next question. You know, that's really what this podcast is dedicated to. We're celebrating Belmont alumni for their entrepreneurial success. We're trying to tell those stories of Belmont alums who are doing crazy things or who had some wild idea when they were here, but they did it, they launched it, and now it's having some great impact around the world. And like you said, they're all over the place, whether it's a restaurant or a social venture or in the music industry. It's all sorts of different ventures. Can you speak to some of the positive impact that you've seen from Belmont entrepreneurs or from Belmont alumni through entrepreneurship? Are there any alums that you've really loved their story or connected with that you want to tell us about?
Oh, there's so many stories. It's been so exciting, and just they're a source of inspiration literally every day. And, I think about, people that were at the 100 Entrepreneurs Dinner. You could think about, some older folks like Harry Allen, who co-founded Studio Bank, that's now having a huge impact in Nashville, or Jose Gonzalez, who's now on our faculty teaching entrepreneurship and the impact of Conexión Americas. Last fall we had a guy who was himself an entrepreneur, who started a network of Hispanic evangelical congregations across the country. He spent time with Jose, and he was like, Conexión Americas is what I've been looking for all my life. And, here was Jose, having already incubated it 20 years ago. Then I think about, some of the people who are doing things more recently, Ashley Crawford and the African American Wind Ensemble, that are doing these kinds of things that just inspire hope and create that sense of imagination for people. And, it's just all the time, the videos that you showed at the 100 Entrepreneurs Dinner, I was just so inspired by those. And then I looked over and there's Tom Cohn wiping a tear away from his eye. And I thought, how beautiful is this, that somebody who invested in the establishment of the center is seeing the fruition of that investment with these stories of lives being changed and the joy. And it ranges across the entire spectrum, commercial ventures and gaming, social ventures, banks, all sorts of empowerment opportunities. That mindset, and it's in entertainment and music. It's in the arts. It's in business. It's in healthcare. I just love seeing the ways that that's happening. I more recently got to know a relatively recent MBA grad who's been a serial entrepreneur in healthcare, and the impact that he's having, Wes Sellers, in really beautiful ways now with caring ways and attending to mental health issues. Mm-hmm. All of those stories are ones I just want to keep telling more of them and shining a light, because the impact is really pretty extraordinary. And the more we learn about that entrepreneurial mindset and the impact people are having, the more other people might say, oh, I could help be part of that too. And, what I love is the culture at Belmont is so team oriented, and entrepreneurship, as you know, is a team sport. And seeing that and seeing it even incubated, on Belmont Boulevard, is just such a wonderful opportunity. I just love the culture at Belmont and want to see it amplified.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give a brief shout out to Jose, because I'm one of his biggest fans. But there's a new restaurant incubator that has recently been launched on campus called Mesa Kamal, and it is connected with Conexión Americas, which Jose launched 20 years ago. But if you're interested, it's on Belmont Boulevard, right at 2006 Belmont Boulevard. It's an incubator for the immigrant community to come in and to use this restaurant space to then launch their own restaurants in the Nashville community. But delicious food. So come on and check it out. Anytime you're hungry, it's always just delicious food for sure. And you also mentioned our Top 100 event, the Belmont Entrepreneur Awards, in that video. So one of the goals of that is just to highlight these stories of our alumni entrepreneurs, to celebrate them, to inspire our students, and to share the message of the creativity and the amazing work coming out of Belmont. So for anyone listening, if you're interested in seeing that video, you can go to belmontetp.com. Click on the alumni tab, and you can see that spotlight video where we're just sharing the story of some of our awesome alums. And we'll be gearing up for another one of those events this December as well. So we'll have many more of those stories. I want to add
just a shout out to you, Elizabeth, because you're a Belmont alum. And you've done such extraordinary work as an entrepreneur in shining a light on our entrepreneurs and helping cultivate and nurture them. And so you're one of those people that are inspirational to me and to Susan and to so many others in the ways you shine a light and help cultivate that entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, I am two times an alum. I just can't, I come here, I leave, and I just keep coming back. So, but I just love the Belmont culture. I've been around campus for 2 decades now, and I can say the culture of our students and that creativity and the passion and the care for the world around them has remained consistent. I'm excited for where we're headed, that we can better equip these students to be leaders, and to support and care for the world around them in more effective ways. But it really is a special place here. So not a day goes by that I don't say this is totally a dream job. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Greg, I always ask this question, and I would just love to ask you and get your thoughts on this. But for that young entrepreneur who has an idea, who's just starting out, what would be your advice? If you could give them a little piece of advice as they're starting on their entrepreneurial journey, what would you want to pass on to them?
It's a great question. I would want to say several things. One, remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and don't lose heart if it doesn't happen overnight, because it's a long game that you're playing. Second thing is, it's a team sport. Don't try to do it alone. You may be able to go faster by yourself, but if you want it to succeed, you're going to need a lot of other people to support and encourage you. And if it's going to be a team sport, stay humble. Be focused on the impact that you're trying to achieve and not what is happening to you personally. If you have that focus on the larger impact that you're trying to achieve, you'll stay focused and your North Star will remain clear. And sometimes it gets challenging, because either through success, where you get a big head because you think you're the best thing ever, or through failure and you think, oh, I'm a disaster and nothing's working, you overinflate either the success or the failure, rather than recognize it all as a learning opportunity to continue to grow and to try to achieve that impact. Part of that team sport is be sure you have a few friends who will continue to tell you the truth. And that truth may be to pick you up when you're down. It may be to knock you down when you're too high, or it may be just to kind of give you a different perspective on where things are. It's really important to be on the journey with friends.
Why wait until you graduate to start your own business? The Cohn Center for Entrepreneurship at Belmont University aids students in building businesses from idea to exit. With a proven track record of successful alumni, Entrepreneurship at Belmont prepares future business owners to create and sustain profitable businesses. Learn more at belmont.edu/business.
I'm just so grateful for your time today, Greg. And before we go, can I ask you a few rapid fire questions?
You bet.
Okay. What is you're newer to Nashville, so what is your favorite thing to do in Nashville, your new home?
Other than walking Radnor Lake State Park, which is just a source of great relaxation, I love songwriter nights. That has just been such a joy. I didn't know songwriting was a team sport in the way it is. And first time I heard about songwriter night, I thought, that doesn't sound like an interesting evening. And they are magical. And I just, anytime that I can help plan one or attend one, it's just been a source of great joy.
It really is something we take for granted in Nashville. Yeah. I mean, the music scene here, it's just wonderful. And most cities don't have that. Don't take it for granted. We
put one on a couple weeks ago. We were hosting a gathering of executive coaches from around the world. And so we put on a songwriter night in the Fisher Center with 3 songwriters, and including one of our alumni and 2 people who teach and are affiliated with Belmont. And the next morning, an older guy came up to me and he said, I've traveled the world. I've been to more than 100 countries. I've coached some of the leading CEOs in the world. And last night was one of the best 10 nights of my life.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, I thought of it as just another night in Nashville.
You've only been here a year and you're already taking it for granted.
That's right. That's right. It was amazing.
It's so amazing. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Probably a Major League Baseball player. And once I realized I probably didn't have the athletic ability to do that, then I wanted to be a sports broadcaster.
Did you ever pursue that, early on? Nope.
Nope. And I assumed that it was something I probably couldn't see a pathway to achieve. And it turns out one of my high school classmates actually became sportscaster Jim Gray with CBS and has had a very successful career. And I think he did it. Why didn't I? But he had the perseverance I lacked.
Well, we need you here. So I'm glad that did not work out for you.
Greg Sage has offered me to broadcast a Belmont game. I said, no, your standards need to be better than that because I've got no skill. I just love sports.
You should totally do it. Okay. Well, my next question is a sports question. Also a Duke question. How good of friends are you with Coach K, and can you hook me up with him? I've got some family members that would love to meet him.
I've worked with him a good bit over the years, but he's really hard to get access to, even in retirement. He keeps himself pretty well protected, but he's a great guy.
Yeah. All right, going back to your earlier thoughts about songwriter nights, who is your favorite local musician?
Oh my goodness, I can't pick just one. I've just loved the people that I've gotten to know through Belmont ties. CeCe Winans, who sang at my inauguration, Brad Paisley, Garth Brooks, Vince Gill, Amy Grant. There are a number of these people who are Belmont connected, either Belmont alums or parents of Belmont alums or Belmont students, and getting a chance to spend time around them has just been so enriching and fun, and learning some of the stories of their own musical gifts and discovery. I'd also say that getting to know songwriters and really the admiration for their craft and how challenging it can be, and yet when the breakthroughs come, I think that's been one of the real gifts. People like our young alum Emily Falvey is just doing some beautiful songwriting, and then Ashley Gorley, who has more #1 hits than anybody else in history,
awesome.
Who's both a Belmont alum and a Belmont parent. Getting to know him, all of this is just. I sometimes pinch myself that I get to live in Nashville and spend time with these sorts of folks and just learn creativity through their gifts. And it really helps me think about leadership in different ways as a result.
Yeah. Well, final question. Tell us one thing that you're excited about. Very broad.
Very broad. I think I'm probably most excited by imagining what Belmont looks like in 2030 and seeing what is going to be possible through what other people do. It's a sense that I have that God's doing something special here, and such extraordinary people like you and many others. And I think I'm really excited to come alongside and see what might be possible, and then to look back and say, wow, who would have ever thought? And that gets me really excited and energized, and also keeps me prayerful that I don't mess things up.
Well, I can only imagine. I mean, what has already been done in the first year that you've been here, thinking about what's coming in the next decade. It's so exciting. Thank you for being on the podcast today. Thank you for supporting our Belmont entrepreneurs. We are so grateful for your leadership on campus. And we're grateful for you and Susan. So we're glad that you're at Belmont, and thank you.
I feel very honored and privileged, and so grateful for you and for all the Belmont entrepreneurs and all the great things that are happening on campus in Nashville and around the country and around the world as a result of that. It's a joy and an honor to be a part of this community.
Thanks for listening. What If is produced by Old Soul. For links and show notes, please visit belmontetp.com/whatif. Until next time, keep asking what if.